Alrighty, good morning everyone. Goblinu with another build video today. However, this time we're switching it up back on Destiny 2, and I have a really awesome arc, or rather a prismatic Titan build for you that uses arc and stasis damage. Let's go ahead and just dive in with our subclass. So we are prismatic, however our super is going to be Thunder Crash. Now, I don't recall if this got a buff or if the exotic we're using got a buff. However, all I know is it does a fuck ton of damage. Super awesome, and I find myself in raids and in dungeons pulling the most DPS, typically 90% of the time. Sometimes by a long shot, and it's come close with some other people, and I've gotten beaten by a couple people sometimes. So it just proves that this setup is super viable and excels in any situation that you're in. Kind of a jack of all trades. That if you need to fine tune for a specific, event or type of gameplay, a raid or dungeon or strike or whatever, you can alter it if you need. For our first class ability, we are running Rally Barricade. You can use Thruster if you want to. However, I prefer the defensive ability that we can get from Rally Barricade. Next, we are running Strafe Lift. For our melee, we are running Stasis Melee, Shiver Strike. Now, this is going to knock targets back, and then they will explode with Stasis, which just fits our build. Super helpful and synergizes well with the rest of our stuff I'll show you. Pulse Grenade. You could use some of these other grenades if you'd like. However, I would make sure that you are running a light energy grenade or light ability grenade. Just with how the loop kind of is, it's nice to be able to have a dark ability and then a light ability. Preferably like this. I just like the pulse grenade the most. For our aspect, we are running Knockout. Now, essentially, this is going to give us more melee range and damage for a little while, and makes amplified, which will give us a speed buff. Super helpful. However, if you wanted to, you could run Consecration. I've seen a lot of people running this right now, and it does work super well, but preferably keeping it with the arc theme, running Knockout. I also just really like the extra melee damage and the speed buff. Next, we are running Diamond Lance. Now, this is essentially part of the bread and butter of this build is us getting these Stasis Lances and throwing them or slamming them on the ground to give the dark debuff and essentially just deal a ton of AOE damage.
This guy's a genius, I'm telling you.
He is a genius. I'm so glad we got that. Moving on to our fragments, we're running Facet of Balance. Essentially, whenever we deal damage with a light sort of ability or weapon, we gain melee energy. And then when we deal dark related damage, we grant grenade energy. So super helpful here, and this is why I have it set up how I do. So essentially, if we are on our secondary weapon dealing damage or using our grenade, we can build this stasis melee, and then vice versa, when we're using our primary stasis weapon, we can deal damage and get grenade energy back. So super helpful and just a nice little loop that you can run. Next is Facet of Courage. Essentially, our light damage abilities will gain increased damage to targets afflicted with darkness debuffs. So in this case, it would be like slow or freeze since we're going with stasis, and it's just going to make our grenade hit a lot harder. We also gain plus 10 discipline, which is super nice. Next is Facet of Ruin. It's going to increase the size and damage of when we shatter stasis crystals or frozen targets. Now, this also comes into play because the solar ignitions, if you wanted to, you could run Consecration, and it will ignite targets, giving you those bigger explosions. You could totally do that if you want to. However, I really like the knockout. So, if you want, go Consecration, you totally can, if that's your thing. It also gives us plus 10 mobility. Next, this is kind of a flex spot. We're running Facet of Blessing. Essentially, whenever we get a melee final blow, we gain health regen. Super helpful when you're in sticky situations, surrounded, and kind of find yourself, you know, oh man, I might die, but hey, I can get a melee kill in real quick, start getting some health regen, maybe get out of that shitty situation and be able to live. But if you wanted to, you could also go Facet of Command. Essentially, this is just gonna help with our Stasis grenade launcher. Anytime we freeze or suppress a target, we're gonna get our weapon reloaded for us. Moving on to Facet of Protection, which is our final one. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. While Transcendent, the effect is increased, and we get 10 strength out of it. So just super helpful. The only thing I'd really change if you wanted to is this one. Otherwise, I would definitely keep these 4 on, for sure. Moving on to our weapons, we're running Lost Signal. This grenade launcher is essentially Stasis Wither Horde, and it is so good. I see a lot of people running it, but I haven't really seen online where people give the praise that I think it deserves. We're running Reverberation and auto-loading holster with high velocity rounds and quick launch. And for our mod, we're running Aerodynamics. Just a super good grenade launcher, super cool looking. However, if you wanted to run something else, you could run Ager Scepter or the new exotic one, Alethanim. What's cool about this one is you can essentially get yourself special and heavy weapon drops. Super nice, super helpful. However, I prefer using my exotic. It's just something I do typically in the heavy spot. I just really have a affinity for using exotic heavies. I don't know why. In any case, for our secondary, we're running the BXR Battler, Incandescent Demolitionist, and then Ricochet Rounds Arrowhead Break with a heavy ammo finder. Now, you could take this off and run some other mods if you want. However, I just like the heavy ammo finder. Super good, reliable pulse rifle. You might be able to find a little bit better, but the fact that both of these are craftable essentially just makes them 2 really solid picks in these spots. Now, of course, depending on the dungeon or raid you're doing, Grand Overture may not be in your spot. However, for me recently, I've found that this thing has just performed insanely well. And coupled with Thunder Crash, I find that I'm really not getting out DPS by anyone really, and when I do DPS phases at the end, I typically find myself basically top dog by a long shot. Now, a lot of that may be due to Thunder Crash, but in any case, Grand Overture is just something that I think is kind of like a jack of all trades when it comes to DPS phases, and a really good pick for any one just looking to do good damage. So in any case, let's head over to the mods. Now for our helmet mods, we're running 2 hands-on mods. Since a lot of this build is around melee, we can build their super back really fast just with these 2 and getting a ton of melee kills. Next, we're running on our gloves Momentum Transfer, Impact Induction, and Focusing Strike. This essentially is just going to help that loop I was talking about earlier, where we can decrease the cooldowns on our stuff, and it's just super nice, well balanced. Next, for our exotic, we're running Curious of the Falling Star. Now, we have melee damage resistance, concussive dampener, and arc damage resistance. However, these I would just customize to whatever fight you're doing. Like Vesper's Host, you could throw on the sniper damage resistance, since there's a lot of like sniping damage in there. For our boots, we're running Elemental Charge and Absolution, and then our Titan Mark, we're running Font of Restoration and Time Dilation. Moving on to our artifact, I'll just show you in here. We have these for our essentially our champion mods, Pulse Scout and Grenade Launcher. Since the grenade launcher never really comes off my bar, it's really just swapping the back bar between these two. But we are running one with Frost, Rapid Impacts, which is super good for our grenade launcher, Trace Evidence, Crystalline Converter, Armor of Aramis, Brain Freeze, Hail the Storm, Inductive Cosmic Crystal. This is kind of a flex spot. You could take this off since essentially it really only applies if you're running a Dark Ether weapon. You could take this off if you want to and put something else, entirely up to you. But since sometimes I do swap my weapons around, I find this sometimes being useful, but mostly not. And then Concussive Reload, using a grenade launcher to damage a boss, damage a champion, or break a combatant's shield weakens them. Yeah. Anyways, just a super well-rounded build. I've been having a lot of fun with it, and Prismatic Titan with Thunder Crash is just super gnarly. So I will go ahead and post the dim link down below for you guys, but I just wanted to go ahead and kind of give you a whole overview in case you don't use dim or anything like that. You just kind of see how I have it set up and why. Anyways, I'll go ahead and just post a little bit of gameplay so you guys can see the gist of how it works. But anyways, guys, I really appreciate it, and I will see you on the next one.
Do I need blue?